With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello, America. It is Eric Erickson here. It is, 10 days from Christmas. Do you have your Christmas shopping done? I hope so. The phone number, 877-973-7425. I got, so my wife and my son's birthdays are both December as well. So you got the birthday shopping and the Christmas shopping, and you got to distinguish between the two. And everything kind of runs together at this point. Okay. I gotta start with actual news. Yesterday we didn't. Today we are. Our Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, that's what they say. When I first started, it was using Siri at one point when he was running for president. Try to get Siri on my phone to translate it out and spell it. I assume, most presidential candidates, if you say it, it'll spell out, even with weird spelling. But with him, it was Pete Buttigieg. That's how Siri translated it at first. Pete Buttigieg. He is the Secretary of Transportation, and he's a deeply ambitious young man. He went from mayor of South Bend, Indiana, to thinking he could run for president of the United States. Now, I got to stop back. I realize that there's a hagiographic treatment to Pete Buttigieg in the press. He is some sort of genius Rhodes Scholar. Now, listen, I gotta be honest with you here. Part of this is he is a young gay man who was mayor of South Bend, Indiana, the home of Notre Dame, and the media loves that stuff. He checks the intersectional boxes. They wanted youthfulness. You want the Kennedy story now? Let's do the Kennedy story, but in gay casting. He and his husband. Now they've got adopted kids, too. They've got kids at home. He's a deeply ambitious guy who used all of that to try to go higher than Pete Buttigieg, mayor of South Bend, Indiana, should have been able to go in one jump. You don't go from a mayor to the White House. You just don't in this country. But Pete insisted he could. And ultimately what it was his way to get out there as ambitiously as possible to run for higher office later. He wound up becoming Secretary of Transportation. Now the Politico says he's building a campaign in waiting. Allies of the Transportation Secretary have built out a dark money group, Win the Era Action Fund, and a political action committee, Win the Era, which has endorsed a small cohort of candidates in the 2022 midterms and allowed Buttigieg to maintain a political footprint as he remains in the cabinet. The new filings, first obtained by West Wing Playbook, paint a picture of a politician publicly downplaying future ambitions while quietly keeping his options open. Win the Era Action Fund spent relatively little in 2021, has mostly operated quietly, as Buttigieg's allies do not want to undermine the president. But they've been giving some money. It's interesting to watch him do this. So he moved from Indiana. Keep in mind, his political aspirations were he was mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and decided to run for president. So now, because Indiana is a red state, he's moved to Michigan. And he started dropping donor money in Michigan on people. It's very interesting to watch. He's building his campaign list. He's seeding donations. He's moved for future planning purposes. But, the thing is with people like this, he puts in the time to appear, but he doesn't like to put in the work. That was actually a criticism of him when he was mayor of South Bend, Indiana. He wanted to look like the mayor without actually doing the work of the mayor. Now he wants to look like the Secretary of Transportation without doing the work of the Secretary of Transportation. This is from the Free Beacon. As rail contract negotiations entered a period of crisis in September, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg phoned in from over 3,500 miles away during a vacation in Porto, Portugal, a posh tourist destination best known for its wine production. Buttigieg quietly jetted off to Portugal on August 29th, a week before Amtrak began canceling all long-distance trips in preparation for a potentially disastrous, catastrophic rail strike. The Labor Day weekend travel was a long-planned personal trip, a Department of Transportation spokeswoman told the Free Beacon, and Buttigieg remained available and engaged from Europe. Hot attractions in Porto include an 18th century Clérigo Tower and the Santa Porto Cathedral. For those who wish to enjoy all the libations Portugal offers, tourists can also spend a day in Porto's sister city Gaia and peruse its celebrated wine cellars. As usual, while traveling on personal time, he remained available and engaged on urgent issues, which in this case meant multiple calls with staff and stakeholders. So during a rail strike, Buttigieg is jetting off around the world for private vacations. Remember, in 2021, during all the oil and transportation crises and the backups at the ports, Buttigieg was on paternity leave. No one even noticed. It turns out Buttigieg was not just on paternity leave. A documentary had come out making the rounds at some of the movie festivals about Buttigieg's rise to office and power, and he was showing up. In fact, while he was on paternity leave, more than one person saw him in airports, including in Chicago, headed to the film festivals to watch the documentary about himself. And then this from Fox News. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, an advocate of increased government action to curb carbon emissions, has taken at least 18 flights using taxpayer-funded private jets since taking office. Buttigieg has traveled across the country, visiting Florida, Ohio, and New Hampshire. Big primary states. And out of the country using a private jet fleet managed by the FAA, according to flight tracker data. The flight record aligned with Buttigieg's schedule of external and public engagements obtained by Americans for Public Trust, a government watchdog group. Elaine Chao, his predecessor, appointed by Donald Trump, faced criticism for using the same jets on 7 occasions, costing taxpayers $94,000. Trump-appointed Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price was forced to resign after reportedly taking 26 private flights the same year. Bipartisan leaders on the House Oversight and Reform Committee have opened an investigation into several Trump administration officials' use of government-owned and private aircraft for travel. Everyday Americans face flight cancellations and long wait times because Buttigieg has completely mismanaged air travel, says the government watchdog. Yet he gets to avoid all that by taking taxpayer-funded private jets to destinations when readily available commercial airline options are there. So wait a second. Buttigieg traveled round trip from Washington to Las Vegas to promote public work projects in Nevada. He used a private jet to fly to multiple states in August on a tour highlighting grants authorized under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. He jetted to Florida, Oklahoma, Minnesota, Ohio, Nevada, and New Hampshire during the trip entitled Building a Better America Tour. The states are considered swing states in the election. He also attended a ceremony during the trip hosted by a large Canadian gay rights organization when he received a prestigious award for his contributions to the advancement of LGBTQ rights. Now, this is important to note. When Tom Price was the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Democrats vilified him so much about private jet travel, he had to resign. The very same Democrats are awful quiet about this. Why do you think that is? The letter after his name. So, okay, here's the thing. We've got 3 stories on Buttigieg. We got 3 stories on him. We've got the 2 of them are very negative. One shows he's plotting the path forward in political power. Typically, what has happened in the past when negative stories about Buttigieg have come out is stories about Kamala Harris came out first. There is, I will tell you, a dirty little secret in Washington, D.C. that reporters talk about, that Buttigieg, when it was unclear whether or not Joe Biden would run for a second term, Buttigieg was the one seeding the negative stories about Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris was the one seeding the negative stories about Buttigieg. This is just known in Washington, D.C. People openly talk about this. You see a negative story on Buttigieg, it comes from Kamala Harris's office. You see a negative story on Kamala Harris, it comes from Pete Buttigieg's office. They don't like each other. They are rivals for 2024. And now Joe Biden suggests he actually is going to run again in 2024. That makes Buttigieg's ambitions expendable. Notice there have not been, and there may be tomorrow, we may wake up over the weekend and find deeply unflattering portrayals of Kamala Harris, but they're not coming right now. They might just come, in which case we can probably blame Buttigieg for those and her for these, but Buttigieg is suddenly expendable. He got out in front of his skis. I don't think it's a coincidence that the 2022 campaign is over. Buttigieg has been deeply ambitious, clearly laying the groundwork for a 2024 bid. And now he's expendable as Secretary of Transportation. They don't need him. They don't need him out there. They don't need him to solidify support with the gay and transgender community. So he can be thrown to the wolves. The thing that's always struck me about Buttigieg is one of those, who does the guy think he is? He's a mayor. And he wasn't even a particularly good or effective mayor in South Bend, Indiana. They had crime problems, financial problems, and other things. But because he was young, gay guy, Rhodes Scholar, the media loved him. He had the media had this love affair with him, and it had largely everything to do with the intersectional box checking as opposed to his core competencies of being a mayor. And then he gets to Washington. He immediately checks out for paternity leave where no one knows he's gone. And it turns out he's on the road to film festivals to watch a film about himself. In the middle of a railroad crisis, he's going off jet setting to Europe for vacations in Portugal. And he's taken private planes everywhere in the ways that when Trump administration officials did it, they got under attack by Democrats. And the Democrats aren't attacking this guy right now. They're letting the media do it. They're letting the Republicans do it. Someone in the Democratic Party, it's not Republicans doing this. Someone in the Democratic Party is pushing opposition research on Pete Buttigieg at this point. Joe Biden has decided to run again for president of the United States. News reports today, which we will get to, Jill Biden has decided she's on board with 2024. They're ready. They're willing. They wish to proceed. So who is sabotaging Buttigieg? At this point, my guess it's people higher in the administration. My guess is people close to Team Biden. They're trying to rein in his ambitions, in large part because, well, he's trying to suck up donations, and the president's going to want that money for himself. Buttigieg has always been too ambitious for his own good. And now, in a 1-week period, there are a series of cascading stories about he's getting too big for his britches, jetting off to Portugal during crises, missing things while he's on paternity leave, using too many private planes, and now a story comes out about his future ambitions in a Super PAC building. This is going to make him radioactive among Democrats. It doesn't matter what the Republicans think. It's a subtle, slow push towards the exits for Buttigieg. The hook has come out from stage left, pulling him back. The Democrats now find him expendable. A friend of mine and I were discussing Boll and Branch sheets the other night when he was sitting on the front porch with me, and he didn't believe that they got softer and softer every time you wash them. His wife was not convinced at all. She figured it was all marketing hype. Now she wants Boll and Branch sheets for all of their beds at home. Why? Because they really do get softer every time you wash them. They're free of toxins, pesticides, harsh chemicals at every step of the process. They're the finest 100% organic cotton on earth. They're made by artisans who earn the pay and the respect they deserve. And right now, you can bring home a better night's sleep this holiday season with Boll and Branch bedding. Their signature sheets even come wrapped and ready in a beautiful holiday gift box. It's going to look good. It's going to feel great. For a limited time, get 20% off your first set of sheets and free shipping when you use promo code ERIC at bollandbranch.com. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND branch.com. Promo code is ERIC, ERICK at bollandbranch.com. Hello there. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. There's an interesting story. Stephen Gutowski at The Reload has this. The Centers for Disease Control deleted a reference to a study it commissioned after a group of gun control advocates complained it made passing new restrictions more difficult. That's right. So the CDC essentially did a study on how often guns are used in self-defense. How often guns are used in self-defense. It looks like 2.5 million times per year in the United States, guns are used in self-defense. CDC officials were approached by Gun Violence Archive, an anti-gun group, saying the 2.5 million number needs to be killed, buried, dug up, killed again, and buried again. That's right. So the study was done by criminologist Gary Kleck. Defensive gun use happens between 60,000 and 2.5 million times per year in the United States, a massive range. Gary Kleck is a known, respected criminologist. So just to frame this for you precisely, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention commissioned a study on how often guns are used for self-defense in the United States. Well-respected criminologist Gary Kleck did the study, and he found on the high end upwards of 2.5 million uses of guns per year for self-defense in the United States. And an anti-gun group called Gun Violence Archive said that, quote, that 2.5 million number needs to be killed, buried, dug up, killed again, and buried again. And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention deleted its own study. They initially stood behind the study and then backtracked after a previously undisclosed virtual meeting with gun control advocates who blasted the data. So they didn't like the data, and the CDC deleted it because it was too helpful for those who support the arguments that guns are used for self-defense. The CDC has not responded to a request for comment by Stephen Gutowski of The Reload, who's now also a CNN contributor covering the firearms industry. Also, the CDC did not disclose any attempts to defend the data or have the data justified. They just deleted it because the gun control groups insisted they delete it because it was too damaging. They claimed that it was misleading. They've cast doubts on the criminologist who did the study, even though he's highly respected in these. Admittedly, the range is pretty broad. 60,000 to 2.5 million is a very broad range. It does seem there is a legitimate basis for the high side of it. All the CDC was trying to do was provide academic information on how many times per year guns are used for self-defense in the United States of America. And the gun control groups did not like that the number was as staggeringly high as it is. This is a political agenda to cover up any data. It's like yesterday in Congress, there was a hearing about transgenderism, and a transgender activist was asked about detransitioning. There are hundreds of stories now in just the last few weeks of people who have detransitioned, including a Navy SEAL. And the transgender advocate says that doesn't happen. They're not aware of any study or anyone who has detransitioned, even though there have been hundreds of stories in the past couple of months. They just don't want to even look at or recognize or admit the data exists when it can be used against them. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. I want to take a couple of phone calls before I get into the machinations on Capitol Hill. Let's start with Larry. Welcome to the show, Larry. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. How you doing?
Good. What's going on?
I was just calling. You were talking about Buttigieg and well, I'm having a brain fart like the president does, running for president again. You know, everybody says Trump's crazy for running again. Since I turned 18 years old, and I'm 62 now, I started voting, and I voted for presidents. You know, all those years. And, well, I vote every time there's a vote. And, you know, President Trump was the first president that I know of on record has ever done exactly what he said he was going to do. Mm-hmm. Number two, my understanding is he only made $4 in 4 years because he took and donated all his salary to charities. No other president's ever done that as far as I know. And you know, but, you know, that's what I wanted to say. I can't believe that Joe's going to run again. But,
listen,
you know,
I truly do not think it's a good idea for the Republicans and Democrats alike to offer up 80-year-olds to run for president. Donald Trump will actually be 78. By the time the 2026 midterms roll around, if he were elected, he'd be Joe Biden's age of 80. I don't think it's a wise thing for us to be offering up octogenarians when we've got such a deep bench on the right. Ray and Marietta, you're going to be up next. Welcome.
Hi, Eric. How you doing today?
Good. What's going on?
I've got a question. When the new Congress gets voted in January, Pelosi's gone, Biden's there, Harris is there. What happens if Biden just slips off a podium and let's just say Kamala Harris has to get voted in and McCarthy comes up as the vice president?
Yeah, it's automatic. If something were to happen to Biden, automatically Kamala Harris becomes president.
Right, but then McCarthy comes in. He's the vice president. Does that throw a monkey wrench into the Senate and everything?
No. So the vice president's seat stays vacant. Harris will have to nominate someone. This is what happened with Richard Nixon when Agnew left. He had to nominate someone. He nominated Gerald Ford. He nominated someone from the House because, what is it, the 25th Amendment, or it says that the House and the Senate have to both approve the nominee. If something were to happen before a vice president could be confirmed, then whoever the Republicans name as speaker would be the president of the United States, and, would not go back to the House once the situation was resolved. This is a perfect segue. I need to bring to your attention a story from CNN. House moderates are lining up behind Kevin McCarthy. The moderates in the House of Representatives are upset with Congressman Andy Biggs, who is, for lack of a better term, never Kevin. There are 5 Republican members of the House of Representatives who are opposed to Kevin McCarthy. They don't want Kevin McCarthy. They are opposed to Kevin McCarthy. And they have the votes, it looks like, possibly to block Kevin McCarthy. I am deeply upset with the conservative movement and conservative organizations who do not have the backs of these conservatives in Washington. To my knowledge, the only conservative group in Washington that is standing with conservatives is Russ Vought and the Center for Renewing America. Everyone else is on the sidelines. Do you not see what's going on? The moderates are lining up behind Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy has been wooing conservatives, making promises to conservatives, and the conservatives aren't biting, and he's building a coalition of moderates, and it is exactly as I told you people it would be. Kevin McCarthy is a wishy-washy, spineless politician who sticks his finger in the wind and goes whichever way the wind blows, and conservatives are wholly and completely expendable to him in any and all cases. He is not one of us. He has never been one of us. For all the people who complain about the Republican establishment, Kevin McCarthy is as Republican establishment as Mitch McConnell. At least McConnell got conservative judges put on the bench. What has Kevin McCarthy ever done for anyone other than make promises that he finds immediately able to break once the situation resolves itself in a different direction? You want that guy as Speaker of the House? I'd at least like a Speaker of the House, even if I disagree with them, who at least I knew where they stood on an issue. Kevin McCarthy doesn't know where he stands on an issue until a poll comes out. It is a damning indictment on the members of the conservative movement who are not speaking out against Kevin McCarthy. For years and years and years, these conservative organizations railed on the Republican establishment, and Kevin McCarthy was part of it. In fact, there's an old clip about the succession plan where even Paul Ryan, who none of these conservative groups like, says Kevin was the guy. Why on earth? Why on earth would you support someone like McCarthy? After all we went through with John Boehner and before him, Denny Hastert, why Kevin McCarthy? A friend of mine who served with him in the California legislature used to tell me a funny story about McCarthy. They served in neighboring districts and would fly home together from Sacramento, where the legislature meets full-time year-round. And that while all the other members of the California legislature headed down to Southern California were reading their legislation, their white papers, marking stuff up, McCarthy was reading People magazine and Us Weekly. It is McCarthy and his idea that he needs to have a pulse on the people. He's a poll-driven politician. He's a principle-less politician. And I think we can do better. And I want to be very honest with you. I would prefer a moderate Speaker of the House because Kevin McCarthy is a moderate Speaker of the House. Kevin McCarthy is not a conservative. I wouldn't even say Kevin McCarthy is a moderate. Kevin McCarthy is an opportunist. And I would rather a moderate Speaker of the House who has some principles and convictions, so at least I know how I might be able to persuade them other than I need to go write a donation and do a poll. Have some convictions. McCarthy has gotten as high as he has gotten on the ladder of leadership because he's been able to play everybody for himself. Opportunists tend to get far in life, and I don't think we need an opportunist in charge of the House of Representatives. Say what you will about Nancy Pelosi, but at least you knew where she stood on the issues, and you knew she wasn't going to waver on the issues. She wasn't going to backtrack on the issues. She might compromise on the issues to try to get something out of it. That's her style. That's the style of someone we should want on our side instead of a rank opportunist who's in it for his own social climbing skills. The Center for Renewing America and Russ Vought, you need to remember this. They're the only conservative group out there right now who's willing to speak up about this. They're the only ones willing to say, no, there are conservatives movement conservatives attacking Andy Biggs, Matt Rosendale, Ralph Northam, and the like for refusing to go along with Kevin McCarthy. Why? Because Trump. I would remind you that in every swing state where Donald Trump weighed in on a major candidate, those candidates lost. And now he's behind Kevin McCarthy. Why the hell do we need a second speaker in a row from California anyway? The Republicans in the House of Representatives, I think, would be nuts to continue to go forward in the path that didn't deliver them many results other than a very close Congress. And I will point out to you conservative organizations who are keeping your mouth shut, the bigger the majority of the House expands for the Republicans over the next few years, the more likely you are to be ignored. The more likely you are to be expendable to Kevin McCarthy. He didn't need you before. He doesn't really want you now. He just knows he needs to get you on board to secure his speakership. Look at all of the promises he was willing to make to you. He even got Marjorie Taylor Greene on his side, making her promises. And now what's he doing? He's aligning with the moderates who are suggesting they'll throw the conservatives out of their committee seats if they don't go along with it. That's the same bullying tactic Nancy Pelosi used. The difference between Pelosi and McCarthy is that it wasn't about leadership and power for Pelosi. It was about principle and progressive conviction. With McCarthy, it's just about the acquisition of power. I am tired of Republicans going along with people who just want to acquire power. He's like Pete Buttigieg, but slightly more accomplished. He's just an ambitious ladder climber. He could have been the mayor of South Bend and run for president. You could see it. Pete Buttigieg probably has more substance than Kevin McCarthy, actually. He was a Rhodes Scholar. Y'all, I've been around this block. I've seen how this game is played. This is the sort of man you don't want to put in the speaker's chair. This is the sort of man you should not put anywhere near higher power than where he is now. Find an alternative. Find an alternative. Find someone with conviction. I don't care if it's a moderate. He's a moderate. He claims to be conservative. He's an establishment Republican. Find a moderate with actual conviction so at least you know where they stand on the issues. Then you can navigate around that person and let the House of Representatives work. You know one of the things that Kevin McCarthy says he's opposed to? He's opposed to an open legislative process. You know what an open legislative process is? It's one of the things that the House Republican conservatives are demanding. One of their demands is an open legislative process on spending bills with open rules on the House floor to allow any amendment. McCarthy says he doesn't support this plan. This used to be standard operating procedure in the House of Representatives. What the House leadership does now is they write these top-down rules and they write these top-down pieces of legislation and they rush them through so no one can see what's in there. Do you know what the Democrats just did with their top-down process where there were no open rules? They rushed through a continuing resolution for a week. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to beef up protections for House employees. It was a 328-page plan updating employment regulations for staffers in the House under overtime provisions and a step towards further unionization of House members. And the top-down approach that Kevin McCarthy wants allowed the House Democrats to ram this through sight unseen with no one paying attention. That's what McCarthy wants. He doesn't want legislators to legislate. He does not want an open process. We need an open process. Congress doesn't work anymore. Congressmen are nothing but pundits, free pundits for Fox and MSNBC. Open the legislative process. You know what? Here's the thing about the open legislative process. The conservatives will not get everything they want with an open legislative process. But the progressives won't either. They will actually have to do the work of legislating and sit in committees and try to find the votes to get things done. They will have to offer amendments on the floor to improve legislation. In other words, they will have to do the job of the House of Representatives instead of letting Kevin McCarthy do it all with his finger in the wind. It's time to make the House of Representatives work again. And if you want to make the House of Representatives work again, you got to reject Kevin McCarthy. You've got to put in a speaker who's willing to have open rules on the floor of the House. You got to have a speaker who's frankly willing to let the majority leader and the minority leader deal with the squabbling of the inter-party intramurals while he actually handles just the House, so that both sides actually have a speaker they can trust to steer things for the House of Representatives properly. Kevin McCarthy's not going to give you that. He wants the power. And I have seen too many people who crave this level of power too much, who represent nothing and stand for nothing other than themselves. And I'm really damn tired of Republicans putting these sorts of people in power. And I'm appalled at members of the conservative movement who are attacking the conservatives in the House who are standing up to this. We've seen this game played before. You know, the last time conservatives stood up and complained about a Speaker of the House, they were proven right when finally everyone rallied around and ousted John Boehner. And it took a long time for the conservatives to show everyone they were right. Here they are again doing the same thing, and the same thing is happening again. Conservative groups are keeping their mouths shut. Some conservatives are attacking the conservatives in the House for raising the red flag on this issue. Listen, none of these conservatives are saying, hey, we have to have a fire-breathing House Freedom Caucus conservative Speaker of the House. They're just saying not Kevin McCarthy. And that the moderates, the squishes, the progressives, the liberals, and the conservative movement establishment people won't even acknowledge their basic point that we just got to do better than him is a damning indictment on where we are. Donald Trump got elected because people got so fed up with the establishment of the Republican Party. And like the Bourbons of France, the establishment Republicans have learned nothing and forgotten nothing and are going to make the same mistakes again until, like the Bourbons of France, things get worse for them. They're chased out of power. The best way to stop that from happening is to stop Kevin McCarthy from becoming the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Okay, I'll leave it at that and move on. First, I got to tell you about Americans for Prosperity. They are building a do tank. What is that? Well, it means they go into states and they do the heavy lifting of helping conservatives become better conservative activists. I don't know that they've taken a position on McCarthy either. I'm going to poke and prod and see if I can get them to do it. But regardless, still like the group. Somebody asked me earlier today in an email, said, you don't agree with them on everything. Why are you working with them? Well, I don't, but I don't know any group or person that I agree 100% on stuff with. But just because I agree with them on 90% and disagree with them on 10% doesn't mean they're bad people. In fact, they've put way more points on the board for the conservative movement than many other conservative groups in Washington, in large part because they actually go into the states and they work with the people in the states and they work with the grassroots in the states and they teach the grassroots to become better grassroots activists, and they want to help you become a better grassroots activist. What you can do is go to americansforprosperity.org/Eric today, americansforprosperity.org/ERICK. Join up with them. They got local chapters all over the country. They're starting new ones every couple of months. You can help them start one. You can learn how to be a better activist, learn how to go to your state legislature or your school board, make the persuasive case for free markets and free people, small government, and better education choice. americansforprosperity.org/ERICK. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Now, listen to me. I need you to subscribe to my email. In fact, I'm going to send out the McCarthy monologue here in a little while so you can share it with your friends. If you text DATA to 33777, you can get a 15% discount on a full subscription. And you should. I got to tell you, if you text data, just follow through and don't get the subscription. See my morning piece. I put up an interesting chart. The plunge in subscriptions on November 28th, the number of people canceling their account because I suggested that maybe the GOP could do better than an 80-year-old who staff wasn't smart enough to block a white supremacist from having dinner with him. Which is interesting because, you know, I actually know overall the trend lines for my show and for even my Substack, everything is trending up. But there is a certain segment of the public that is only Trump and can't abide any criticism of him. And they're rapidly reducing themselves to a minority as the GOP starts looking forward to fresh faces who can do the things Donald Trump did and bring the policies Donald Trump brought without having the baggage of Donald Trump. That's encouraging to me.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you want to get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.